buckle up, y'all. We are going into a update, a recap on what has transpired since the Pluto return of the United States, which was pretty much in the started to happen around 2022. We're in the middle of it. I am recording this right before a full moon in Capricorn, July of 2024. Pluto is going to have its last little moment in October, November of 2024 at 29 degrees of Capricorn, and thus still in the territory of the United States Pluto return. So let me just recap just a brief moment, because the video that I did on the Pluto return, please enjoy this lighting. I thought I'd add a little bit of drama just because we're channeling some really dense material right now. So I did this video talking about the Pluto return of the United States, and it is formative in terms of understanding why things are so chaotic in the world. The United States as a world superpower, anything that happens to the United States will utterly impact the rest of the world. But, the United States as a country that has set a lot of standards for how the West operates, and also just has its thumb in many places all around the world. Anything that happens to the States will, of course, have a chain reaction impact on everything else. So when I did this video, the Pluto return of the United States in 2022, it was speculative, right? There was things that were very clear, right? Pluto is in the second house of the United States natal chart. So I specifically talked about slavery and how that is the origination point of the United States. And, the thing that I wasn't as educated about, but actually all activists that have spoke about, especially during the time of the civil rights movement, activists specifically have spoken for years and years and years about the United States connection with Israel. But this obviously came to be very, very much information that we're dealing with on a collective level, on an international level. There is no way that you can unsee this or not know this at this point. And that is the thing about Pluto, my friends. It is where we are met with the utmost rotten part of something. There was things about the Pluto return to the United States that we were speculating, because it's a 3-year process on a technical level. I mean, this is going to have widespread impact. But I really want to talk today about all the little details that I noticed so that we can really project a little bit further and just ground. I think it's important because oftentimes with astrology, we're trying to predict things, right? And rarely are we going back to just make sure hey, we were looking at it this way, what actually transpired, right? So let's start off with kind of the pandemic period, because in that time of the pandemic period, and by the way, y'all, this conversation is going to go in a lot of different spirals, but we're going to come back to the root, which is all connected. So we're in a period right now where we have access to kind of put all of the weird and disparate pieces that may not have made sense in the past, or it has been speculated, but now it is just so available for us to see it. So I am so excited to share this with you guys. I've been having this on the tip of my tongue for almost a year now. So as I was saying, in the start of the pandemic, March of 2020, right? That is when the CDC announces that COVID is an epidemic. It is a cause of national emergency, right? And guess what? Saturn was at 29 degrees Capricorn. Saturn was there. So fast forwarding, within the week of December 13th through December 20th, we had the first scheduling of a COVID vaccine. We had the first kind of suggested scheduling for the COVID vaccine rollout, right? And guess what? Saturn was between 29 degrees Capricorn at that time, and then transitioning into the first degree of Aquarius. And that is also where Jupiter was at the same time, right? That Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the very first degree of Aquarius is very important because Pluto is still going to travel over this space. So just this range that Pluto will travel in 2024, still between, this year it is between approximately 29 degrees, 28 degrees Capricorn to 2 degrees Aquarius. So that's kind of the range of the zodiac that we're focusing on in this conversation. So I'm just kind of laying it down. So yeah, the first vaccines were administered at that time. When that occurred, and I knew that Pluto was going to travel over that first degree of Aquarius still, I just knew that in the future, when Pluto actually makes it over to those last degrees of Capricorn, which is now this year, I just figured that there would be more information. And as I did my research, I was like, yeah, all these dates are lining up. So by the way, the insurrection that happened on January 6, 2021, guess where Saturn was? 2 degrees of Aquarius. That is actually where Pluto has stationed retrograde this year. So I'm just seeing connection there, and I will come back to that, but I want you guys to just bookmark these little details. This is how astrology helps you be like a sleuth, because you just know things based on position in the zodiac. So in 2023, around April of 2023 is when Pluto goes into Aquarius for the first time. So it crosses over 29 Cap and it's in Aquarius. And at that time is when the COVID is declared no longer a public emergency, right? By the way, my stance on the vaccine is it's pretty neutral. I don't think it's necessarily good or bad. This is not an opinion piece. This is me sharing information about what actually happened based on the astrological kind of configurations. And when Pluto was getting ready to station direct within 2023, that is also when the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine were also no longer being utilized in the United States. So just sharing that the Pluto cycle has a lot to do with just the vaccine rollout, or it's just it's really hitting those places that were established back in 2020. Also in May of 2023, there was a big leak of information that the Secretary of Health in the UK, 100,000 text messages were leaked that were specifically describing how they were creating a public stir. They were creating false information or just creating panic based on just kind of determining when they're going to share specific information. And, the following year, this was just a few months ago, I think it was probably in May of 2024, when Pluto was at station retrograde, getting ready to move back to 0 degrees of Aquarius. It comes out in public awareness that Dr. Fauci fabricated the 6-foot rule. It wasn't particularly based on science. So, this is the person who everyone was looking to in terms of the regulations, safety measures, the social dynamics for how we engage in international, just a pandemic in general. So Pluto shows us where the truth is waiting to come forward, or things that we tried to conceal, or things that were not necessarily based on truth. Pluto will always reveal what happened after September of 2023. We had the conflict that's happening over in Gaza right now. And, that is just an ongoing thing. What I want to say about that is just wow. Just the way that when I actually started doing research on, the chart of Israel has a moon approximately, probably within 1 to 3 degrees, somewhere around there. I'm pretty sure it's 2 degrees of Leo. And guess what? That is where Pluto is opposing the moon of Israel. That is the chart of the Nakba. That is the chart of the origination of the so-called state of Israel. And so this also speaks to another thing. And yes, of course, like Israel is tied to the United States financially. And this is something that is not, it is widely known at this point. But what I want to articulate is the way that Pluto operates, my friends, because the Jewish people experienced incredible tragedy during World War I. And by the way, guess where Pluto was traveling at the start of World War I? It was at somewhere between 1 degree and 2 degrees Leo, thoroughly opposing that place that Israel would be originated about 7 years later. Astrology is crazy, y'all. But I think that what I was really trying to say is that because Pluto relates to trauma and because it relates to unimaginable suffering that all of us experience as humans, but also Pluto is like a lot of generational trauma, like it's intergenerational collective trauma. And so it actually shows what it is like, as Pluto now is exactly opposed to where it was at the start, at the origination of the so-called state of Israel. And the level of, you can't want a free Palestine because that makes you a Zionist, right? Like this very, very infantile rhetoric around like, you can't diminish who I am by wanting others to have freedom. That is very Plutonic, and it's coming from a really deep state of being wounded and hurt. Like in looking at charts for all these years, it's like to the level of someone's anger, to the level of how much someone is unable to recognize humanity, or to the level in which they would be willing to humiliate. That is all Pluto stuff. And it just shows that no matter how much time passes, healing is something that traverses time and space. And if you're not addressing it on a very holistic level, it shows up as very, very deep-seated anger to the point where you are willing to commit war crimes in order to, and then you will justify those things, right? Like that is an example of how Pluto operates. And what we're actually witnessing in real time is the mental illness that happens when we actually, sometimes the healing that needs to occur, it is so great. How can you actually process mass genocide of millions of Jews in the first part of the 1940s? And I don't think that it's possible to really be able to hold that on an ancestral genetic level. And it's very, very similar, my friends. It is very similar to Karen. Karen is the thing that developed in the pandemic. It is this irate expression of whiteness that is so contorted and so self-important to the point where, yes, it is willing to dehumanize. It is willing to have whatever it takes. It is the same energy. And that is also an example of unprocessed pain. It is the example of like unprocessed guilt and shame and just all the fucking nasty, rotten shit that we carry in our soul. And so I'm just illuminating that, these things that we're seeing that are so hard to contemplate, they're so hard to witness, they're so fucking annoying to have to watch like very infantile actions being repeated on the news, and just like the concept of war for so many of us just is so boring. And not only that, but it's also like incredibly painful to be in the middle of and having to hold the pain on that humanity level. There is the mathematics of the astrology, that it is actually it is a culminating time for the healing of many Jewish people right now, carrying that ancestral memory. These things come up during a Pluto transit in the same way that in the United States, we are also dealing with our Pluto transit, right? And also, Israel and the United States are like this. So, what I'm articulating is just wow, like the way that the astrology is like really doing its thing. And maybe, hopefully, you understand what I'm saying. But I will go further. And there's another layer of this that it's like, the whole thing with like the Jeffrey Epstein case, guess what? In July of 2018, when his case around sex trafficking was reopened, the North Node was at 29 degrees Capricorn, my friends. As Pluto was at 29 degrees Capricorn in December of 2023, just a few months ago, Pluto was at 29 degrees Capricorn, and then the judge was saying, we are going to release the files of all of the guests that came to Epstein's Island. We're going to release that in January of 2024, right? Trump is on that list. So many celebrities, so many people in power, so many people that actually run a lot of the doings of the United States, and that has a lot to do with the wealth that also is happening at the same time as the Pluto return to the United States. So it is undeniable that what is happening right now in celebrity culture, also just celebrity culture is interwoven with trafficking because of, and government culture, like the United States culture is actually tied to trafficking in so many ways. And the reason why I can say this so blatantly, because I'm looking at the astrology, I'm looking at simply 29 degrees Capricorn, and I'm like, all of these events are tied together. And one of the things that I learned recently is that the entertainment industry, and particularly Universal Music Group, which is like one of the primary music labels in the United States, part of their money funds the private prison system, like all of the private prisons that are just so prevalent in the United States. So it has always been about free labor, my friends. It has always been about exploitation. And so when you put all of these things together, how the Epstein case is something that also very Plutonic, ties everything together, and how the culmination point of the Industrial Revolution at the start of when the update to the cotton gin created a lot of that shifting in terms of industrialization, just like a lot of the United States wealth is like based on this period. It's all coming to a head right now. And so obviously when the Pluto return happens, like we're also looking at, yes, financial dynamics, but it's like, what is happening in the world? Well, what is happening in the States? How many COP cities are in the process of being built right now? Starting with that gigantic facility in Atlanta, but also all across most of the states. They are building gigantic detention centers as well as training facilities for cops. And they're using the same training tactics as the military in Israel. It's all tied together. And that's the thing about Pluto, is like we're able to see these things. You have to be blind and ignorant and choosing ignorance to not see these things. But it's a lot easier when we have something organizing like the astrology. And, when it comes to some of these secret societies, which I feel like I also need to do like a whole video on that, like, man, like it's crazy. I'll just say that guess what other institution or body has the same Pluto as the United States? Yeah. The all-seeing eye, my friends. The astrology for that is crazy. Like I want to do a video on that, and I probably will at some point. But Yes, like I'm really glad I got this off my chest because I have just been feeling like I need to share this with you guys. I feel like it's my duty, it's my job to share these things. And what it means is that when Pluto makes its final pass to 29 degrees Capricorn in October, November of this year, it's like there's something that will be a lot more clarified. But I think that what astrology offers us is that while we go through a massive transition culturally, at least usually with a Pluto transit, because it's like 3 years, right? Usually the first year is more speculative. We're getting familiar with the terrain. The second year we have a lot more of a stronghold. Like right now right now we're definitely like, okay, I see what's happening. You could actually say that 2024 is like the third year. It kind of is the third year. Um, but yeah, it's just becoming more and more clear. And wow, so more to be revealed. But I think this recap was necessary because the last Pluto return video was in 2021. So yeah, my friends, my name is Oak with Oak Astrology School. I'm also a holistic chef. If you're interested in studying astrology with me, these are the kinds of conversations that I go over in my transits course. I'm really, really into transits. I'm really into doing astrological research, especially for things like this. I have mentorships, they happen throughout the year. Check out my website if you're interested in any classes or private mentoring, oakastrologyschool.com. I'm also a holistic chef and an herbalist. I have herbs that I sell, herbs that are for specifically the chaos of 2024 and 2025. So you can check that out. My website for my consulting is oakastrology.com and you can book a reading there. Oh, yeah, I also have a podcast, which you can hear more about all of the thoughts that I have when it comes to astrology and healing. It is called ABSOLEM, The Art of Astrology and Demon Slaying. Thank you and bless.